Not every horse can cope with being barefoot, but we're going to give it a pump with Chino. So I'm going to see if that increases. I'm also looking to see his hoof balance. So I am very conscious that I'm going to take the pads off. We are back in part 2 of our series of taking Chino barefoot. So Chino is retired. He's a 16-year-old Connemara, aren't you, bud? He's my wife's horse, so we've got to look after him. But he has arthritis all the way through the bottom of C6, C7 and T1, and then all the way up his spine. He's riddled with arthritis, so he's not working anymore. And so we are taking the time to try and take him barefoot. Now, not every horse can cope with being barefoot, but we're going to give it a pump with Chino. Today, we're going to take his pads off because he's got pads on underneath, and we're going to leave his shoes on. And then next time we will probably aim to take his front shoes off. He's already had his hind shoes removed. They're a little bit chipped up, so we'll give them a little tickle to make sure they're all brought back together and functioning properly. But yeah, today is Chino's second shoeing in his journey to going barefoot. Chino obviously has pads on with a soft impression material underneath. And today we're going to shoe him so that we remove that impression material and that pad. Now, we put these on years ago. Chino's had pads on for years, and that's for a couple of reasons. One, because he's got wonky conformation, and the pads help prop him up a bit more. And two, because he gets really sore when he goes over stony ground. Obviously, we are out now, and he's been turned away, and the ground that we've got is really good, so he's not on stony ground at all, and he's not really walking out. Hello, George. So whereas this pad combination is great, and it gives us a bit of frog support, and it allows his foot to function a bit better, and it allows us to load through the foot a bit better, we don't actually need it now for his own support. What we might find is that if he starts going a bit lame, then we'll put them back on, because actually, because of his conditions... Hello, don't bite Chino, you'll get in trouble. Because of his condition with his arthritis, that puts a lot of pressure in different areas. So he struggles. He's had an injection in the base of his spine because he struggles putting his neck to the floor. So by taking his pads off and his shoes off, we run the risk of changing the way that he stands and his posture. If we change his posture and he can't reach the floor through his neck, which is a small percentage chance, then actually that will have a negative impact on his life. So we have to bear that in mind when we're shoeing a horse that is like Chino, where he's got a lot of issues going on that aren't directly related to his feet. He's got conformational issues, which you'll be able to see in the first one as well, which we'll put that video up on the screen now. And so you can see that transitional process that we're going through. But for him, it's about looking after this part of his body. It's not necessarily about looking after his feet, although his feet, if you look after his feet, then we'll be able to look after his neck a bit better as well. So that's where we're taking the pads off today. We are going to see how he goes, and I can constantly monitor him because he is one of our horses. And actually, we can go, right, is he happy? And if he's happy and he's still eating fine, and he's still moving fine, then we will progress to the next stage, which will be taking his front shoes off and taking him completely barefoot. And if he's not happy, and if his feet disintegrate and deteriorate without the pads on, or, as I said earlier, if he can't put his neck to the floor, then and he changes the way that he's standing, then actually we'll end up putting his pads back on. He's had shoes on his whole life, and we need to be really careful. We can't just whip them off. We need to look at a whole host of things, including dietary requirements and things like that. But we need to look at everything in relation to whether we continue to take his shoes off and go further with this, or whether we go, actually, we need to keep him in some sort of shoeing package so that he is happy and he is confident and maintains a good quality of life. So last time he had a bit of bruising here. He hasn't got that this time, which is great. But I am very conscious that I'm going to take the pads off. So I haven't taken too much sole out of here. The frog is in a really nice condition. I know that central sulcus is a bit deep, but that will repair itself, and I'm going to trim that up a tiny bit more in a minute. But I haven't wanted to take too much sole out of here, because the more sole that I remove, the more there's a potential that he'll be sore. So that's the only thing that's really different, is I'm keeping a bit more sole in than I would do if we had a pad on, because we now have natural exfoliation, whereas before we had a pad in the way, so there was no exfoliation that was going to come out. So we just had to be careful of that and make sure that foot wasn't overbearing through too much sole pressure, because that can cause lameness as well. So just trimming him up behind, nothing spectacular. Just giving him a nice little barefoot trim, making sure everything's where we want it to be. He's at the bottom of these old nail holes now, so his feet are just chipping up a little bit. But this will be the last time that we have to worry about, hopefully the last time that we have to worry about hoof chips from nail holes. So where there were holes in the foot, that can create a void, obviously, and that can create a bit of a chip just as that's growing out and getting to the bottom. So you can see here there's a very old, you probably can't see it on the film, but there's a very old nail hole here from where we took the shoes off like 2 or 3 shootings ago. And that's just growing out now. And you just find that there is a potential for feet to chip around old nail holes just because there's a hole there. So we are refitting Chino's shoes. However, he's not doing anything. I'm environmentally friendly. If we can get away without putting new shoes on him, then I will do. I'm going to tweak them a little bit because he's had his pads taken off, but nothing spectacular. Just bring them in a tiny bit from the quarters to compensate for not having that pad there. So all I've done with these front shoes is, where fitting for a pad, you fit a bit wider. With these, I don't need to fit as wide, and if I have it with loads of width, he's only going to put them off. So by giving him a bit of support to his outsides, essentially I've done is just narrowed up the shoe a little bit around my quarters, just to compensate for the fact that he hasn't got pads on anymore. We haven't got any power here, so I haven't ground them up or anything. But yeah, and there's no point in putting new shoes on him because we're being environmentally friendly. He doesn't need them. And the nail holes are still small enough to fit the size nail in that I want. So now that he hasn't got his pads on, I'm gonna be looking out for how he is moving, how he's behaving, and whether we have any postural change, which we might do. Also, how his foot changes, because what we might find is because of his conformation, he loads quite heavily through his foot. They all load heavily through their foot. But what I mean by that is we are looking for changes. So he gets a little bit of bruising here sometimes. So I'm going to see if that increases. I'm also looking to see his hoof balance. So he grows high inside, low outside. So I'm looking to see whether that changes that hoof balance. And I'm just looking to see if we have any changes in overall foot health. So like thrushy feet, or if that foot migrates away from his norm based upon conformation, injury, etc., etc. He gets tight through his chest because he's quite narrow through his chest. Because he's narrow through his chest, he has to be tight through it. So sometimes you find, especially when he was a bit younger, And in a bit more work, he didn't like having his feet pulled out too far. And so he'd done a lot of work on his chest region and like his muscular development through there as well. Let's get you finished off. So Chino's all finished now. We've taken the pads off and I've refitted his shoes to compensate for that. Hopefully next time we'll be taking him barefoot. But as I said earlier in the video, there are lots of things and lots of variables involved in this process. So it's just a case of us, hello buddy, just a case of us making sure that he is comfortable in his retirement. Because if he's not comfortable, then he will go downhill even more and it's just unfair on him. Whereas if we can make him as comfortable as possible, barefoot is great, and if your horse can cope barefoot then it's amazing, but not every horse can cope barefoot, and that's where we have a variety of things at our disposal to help them function and perform or retire to the best of their abilities and as happy as they can be. Hey bud, you don't care, do you? No.
Do you want to say we'll revisit him in 5 weeks?
Yeah, so we will revisit him in 5 weeks time and we will video the whole process again, and any observations or any changes we can discuss and we'll go through at that time. And yeah, we will continue his journey and we will see how his feet change over time and how he goes and how he performs.